Welcome back to physical and chemical changes. We're going to start with activity 4 here. This is my new lab assistant, Jordan. Okay, as you see, she is appropriately dressed with her PPE, gloves, goggles, and lab apron. Okay, we are going to look at activity 4. Activity 4 is a tea candle where we're going to basically look at the chemical changes of wax. We'll burn the tea candle, record your observations. I think you can do that one on your own, and so therefore we're going to move straight to activity 5. The second part of activity 4 is watching ice melt. You'll use the tea candle and the aluminum weigh dish. Please follow the directions, and that is the premise of activity 4. So in activity 5, we're going to use 2 test tubes. Again, you'll use your test tube rack and your cleaned test tubes. We're going to label our test tubes, and Jordan's going to measure out 5 mils of water, and I'm going to weigh out, using a clean weigh dish, 1 gram of sugar. So I tear out my scale. Doesn't take long to get 1 gram of sugar. Okay, pour that into one of those. Okay, and again, if you're slightly over a gram, don't worry about it. And I'm going to pour in the 1 gram of sugar into a test tube. And I'm going to look and I'm going to note observations about my water and my sugar. And I'm going to record those on my sheet here. So, what observations do you see about your water? Okay, we use the thermometer. We'll measure the temperature of the water. About 16 degrees. Okay. And I'll make some observations about the water and the sugar. Observations, we have clear and colorless. What can you say about the sugar?
White.
Okay. So we have, it's white, it's granular,
It's solid.
solid. Okay. And so now in activity 5 here, we're going to add the water to the test tube. And here, go ahead and add the water to the test tube. And this is where we are going to stop showing you what to expect. Now, unfortunately, you'll have to do some swirling here. And you might need to get one of your pipettes to assist in the dissolving process. Right over there.
Oh, there it is.
You also want to check to see, did you have a temperature change? And note whether or not, again, this is a chemical or physical change. This particular activity, you'll need to wait approximately 1 to 2 minutes because sugar, the bonds of sugar happen to be stronger than the bonds of salt, and it takes longer for sugar to dissolve in water than it does salt. Okay. All right, you also need to check the temperature, final temperature, and see whether or not we have a chemical change. Okay, so go ahead and dump this. And she'll go ahead and wash that. and this test tube. And that's the end of activity 5.
Not very clean
Stop
either.
that for me.
Apparently.
Hi, welcome back. We had an issue with our thermometer, and so we had to take a break and come back. And so if you end up running into a problem with your thermometer, you could call Carolina Biologic, or you can replace it with a digital thermometer you can get at Walmart, CVS, any place that you can basically use, I guess Kmart, whatever, but just as long as you have access to a thermometer that you can use throughout the rest of your labs. We just happen to have a thermometer in the lab that we were able to replace it with. So we're going to move on to activity 6. We're going to place one test tube in our rack. We've cleaned our test tubes. And now we're going to measure out 2 mils of our 1 molar sodium hydroxide. And our lab assistant is going to do that for us.
Wasn't it that one?
Nope, that's our phenolphthalein,
There's all I want.
HCl.
There's copper.
There it is. Okay. So she's going to measure out 2 mils of our sodium hydroxide.
Ooh, challenge here.
You can use a pipette or you can pour it. Okay, just to clean that. There you go. Okay, and she will put that into a test tube. All right. She's going to clean her pipette. Cap our chemicals. Now we're going to record the color of our sodium hydroxide and our phenolphthalein. Notice that both are clear and colorless. You want to notate that prior to mixing the two chemicals. We also want to measure the temperature. Of our sodium hydroxide. Now we seem to be getting a more accurate reading. It's about 24 degrees. We'll notate that. Okay. And since the reaction between phenolphthalein and our sodium hydroxide is what we're going to be observing, I'm not actually going to add it because I know what to expect. So you're going to put in a few drops of your phenolphthalein into your sodium hydroxide. You'll notate any color changes, thermal changes, and you'll remeasure your temperature. Okay? So in part B, now we will take, dump that into your waste. It's a test tube. Now we'll do the same thing.
I'm not clean either, so
You're fine. So sodium hydroxide is our base. Now we're going to test an acid with phenolphthalein. While she's doing that, I will measure out 2 mils. Okay. And again, you will note there we go, both the color of your phenolphthalein and your HCl. This is part B of activity 6. We're going to take the temperature, and I expect that they'll both be 25 degrees. Or thereabouts. This one happens to be 25, whereas the sodium hydroxide was 24. We have another messy chemist over here.
Okay. I always said I was perfect.
Hey, messy chemists. And like I said, it's a lot of fun to have a partner helping you out.
Who's the messy chemist now?
A lot more fun when you have somebody to work with. Okay, and again, the observation you want to note is after you add the phenolphthalein to your acid. Thank you very much. Go ahead and dump that. And that's all you're looking for in activity 6. Record your observations and whether or not it's a physical or a chemical change, and explain why it's a physical or chemical change. Okay. All right. Activity 7 is the same thing. You will be using your copper chloride, I'm calling it copper sulfate, 2 mils of that, and your sodium hydroxide. Okay, you'll take the temperature of both of those, measure the room temperature, or measure your temperature of those, and observe any changes and determine whether or not they're physical or chemical changes. Activity 8. Go ahead and pause it, son.